The field of user experience design is constantly evolving as the years go by. As user behaviors change and technology advances, it is our job as designers to adapt to these changes if we want to stay relevant in this domain. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what it means to be a UX UI designer in 2024 and how to stay relevant for the years to come. So before we dive in, let's take a look at how UX fits within an organization. So typically in a tech company, you would have a product team, then you would have a design team, and then you would have an engineering team, right? So what happens is the product team will conduct user research, they'll come up with user insights, and they are the ones that decide what features should be implemented. So they'll come up with a few features and then they will pass those features to the design team that is required to design wireframes or final UI screens. And then they will pass those UI screens to the engineering team. Like they'll hand it off to the engineering team and the engineering team will build out those solutions. So that's typically how UX fit within an organization. But in the last 5 years, if you notice, there have been, different terminologies or different roles. So you have UX UI designer, user experience designer, you have product designer and so on. All of those roles fit within the design team. Now the sizes of these teams, including product and engineering, depends on the size of the organization as a whole. So a startup would typically have maybe 2 or 3 people in the product team, they'll probably have 4 or 5 people in the engineering team and maybe just 1 or 2 people in the design team. But the thing is that as the years have gone by and as technology has advanced, with tools like AI, a lot of a designer's skills to a certain extent are being replicated by AI quite well. If you think about it, a small company that wants to hire a design team, they're not going to sit and hire a separate UX researcher, they're going to sit and hire a separate information architect. What they're going to do is they're going to hire a UX UI designer or a digital or a product designer and have them leverage these AI tools that are available in the market. So you could use AI to conduct secondary research. You could use AI to come up with a few concepts for your UI designs. So basically the point that I'm getting at is if you want to stay relevant to 2024 and beyond, you need to start thinking from a generalist standpoint. You need to think of being a generalist UX UI designer. So what does a generalist UX UI designer mean? Well, if you think about it, there are 2 fields, right? UX and UI. That is what most people debate about these terms, but to keep it simple, think of UX as conducting user research, coming up with ideas and mocking up a few solutions or very rough solutions in the form of wireframes. And UI involves taking those wireframes and converting them into higher fidelity visual designs, right? So that's typically what a generalist UX UI designer would do. Another analogy that I can give to explain this is if you think of development, right? Usually you have front-end developers and back-end developers, right? But then you have a term called full-stack developer. So full-stack developer can do front-end and back-end. So for a startup that has limited funds, would they hire 2 people or would they hire 1 person and pay that 1 person a little more? It would be cheaper than hiring 2 separate developers. So you need to think of it from that standpoint. A company that's going to hire designers in 2024 and beyond, they're going to start hiring designers that can wear multiple hats, because with the tools like AI and the other design tools that are out there, you can very well handle UX and UI on your own. Now, I've worked in UX for over 6 years and I've worked on B2C apps, B2B enterprise software solutions, worked with e-commerce companies, brands that I took from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. And in my years of experience, from what I've learned, I've compared my knowledge to the courses and the bootcamps that are out there. And the courses and the bootcamps that are out there, they're not bad, but they are too theoretical. In the sense that when you actually go and try to apply the skills in a full-time job or at an internship, it can be a bit challenging. So I have written a book called Kickstart UX, Beginner's Framework, that's meant to help you learn the most essential skills to be a UX designer and to get yourself ready to apply those skills in the real world. And if you want to hone your UI skills and learn your UI skills, I think the best place to start is by trying it yourself. So what you need to do is go to Dribbble or go to Behance or any of these UI inspiration websites. You download a design that looks good to you or a design that is designed by a talented designer. Open it in Figma and try to replicate that design to the T. Even though you don't know how to use Figma, this is a great way to push you in how to learn how to use Figma and how to learn user interface design, in the bargain. Because what's going to happen is, as you try and replicate the intricacies in this design that you just copied, you will realize the decisions that the designer has made, and subconsciously you will improve your skills and your eye as a designer. So I think for learning UI, this is a great place to start. Okay, and the second point that I want to mention, if you want to stay relevant as a UX UI designer in 2024, apart from being a generalist, is you need to be more business minded and think from the business standpoint as well. So a huge misconception is that UX designers or user experience designers only focus on the user's pain points and goals. But at the end of the day, who's hiring you? Who's paying your salary? Is the business, right? So you need to understand that the needs and wants of a business are equally important than the needs and wants of a user. So I like to call myself a digital product designer instead of a UX UI designer, because it removes the word user from my title. So that removes the bias that I have towards users. That being said, it is important to understand user needs and design for users, but don't forget about the business. So how do you go about becoming business minded? Well, you can start off by understanding metrics and what metrics mean for a business. Now, an example of a metric is conversion metric, or click-through rate, or bounce rate, right? These are different metrics that businesses use to measure the success of a project. So for instance, if you work with an e-commerce brand and they want to redesign their homepage, they may tell you that we want to increase our add to cart ratio by 20%, right? That is a metric that they have given you. So as a designer, you need to understand what design decisions do you need to make, what features should be presented to help reach that goal of add to cart increase by 20%, right? So an example would be, let's say at the top you talk about a discount, or you make the add to cart button more visible, or you could show key features of the product upfront so the user is interested and entices them to add to cart. So these are different things that you need to understand as a designer from a business standpoint. Because if you think about ads and offers and banners, from a user experience standpoint, sometimes banners can be too intrusive. Like, when you visit a page and you see a banner that comes in your face, most likely most of us skip it, right? So you may wonder, as a user experience designer, why is the business showing me this banner every time I visit a website? But they're showing you that because they want you to interact with the banner. They want you to provide your information or buy or purchase a product, because their goal is to achieve a success metric, and which might be an add to cart increase. So once you start thinking from the business standpoint and not just user, that will 10x your value as a designer in a company. So you're no longer just part of the design team, you're also thinking from the product team standpoint, from the stakeholder business team standpoint, and so on. So keep that in mind if you want to be a relevant user experience designer in 2024 and beyond. So if you want to kickstart your career in this domain, you can take a few courses or boot camps, or watch some videos here on YouTube. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you could check out my book, and that will help you start your career in UX with practical information and examples that will get you started in no time. So check it out, and thank you so much for watching. Happy designing.